Hey guys, it's Dave. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm sharing with you my top 6 space stocks. Number 1, I think, should come as no surprise, but hopefully there will be some good information in here for everyone interested in investing in space. Before I dive into that, though, I did just want to thank briefly my newest channel member, KTB. Thank you so much for signing up to support what I do here. Before we dive into what these 6 companies are, I think the first question you might be asking is, well, should I even invest in space, and why would I want to? The answer to that is that the space economy is booming lately and projected to grow massively over the next decade. Plus, the cost of bringing mass to orbit has been dropping drastically thanks to the likes of the SpaceX and others mastering reusability, and it's only looking to drop further, which are enabling many new companies which were previously not viable due to those high costs. So we have a lot of new up-and-coming companies doing a lot of exciting things. Simultaneously, we have a bit of a new space race going on between the US and China, both of them announcing plans to land on the moon, set up bases there near the South Pole, and investing heavily in going back to the moon, and a lot of that money flowing to the private companies we talk about today, as well as some others. And if that's not enough for you, well, it's just super damn cool to see rockets and spacecraft flying. Who doesn't want to invest in that? Before we dive into that, though, first, a quick message from today's sponsor. If you're tired of cheap, poorly made phone cases and holsters, then today's sponsor, Nutshell, is for you. They make premium handcrafted phone holsters using only the highest quality, genuine leather, and come with a 2-year warranty in the event of any problems. Nutshell is offering an exclusive 10% discount code for viewers of this channel with code DAVEG, or by clicking the link in the description down below. I have a couple different models myself, and I can confirm that they're all very high quality, and it's great not to have my pockets overflowing with phones and wallets during my workday. Nutshell is also a New Zealand-based small business, so if you happen to be a Kiwi and like supporting local as well, definitely give them a look. Thank you again to Nutshell for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back. Okay, with that out of the way, let's start off with number 1. And yes, this is no surprise to you if you watch this channel regularly. I am rocking one of their shirts. It is Rocket Lab. So there's a lot of things going for this company. They are personally my top position in terms of space stocks. They have a great vision of being an end-to-end space company that I think really sets them apart from a lot of the other options. So they're building their own rockets. Obviously, most of you are probably familiar with the Electron and know that they're building out the Neutron. They're also building satellites and satellite components, including solar panels, reaction wheels, star trackers, basically acquiring or developing the ability to make everything you need to build out satellite constellations. Now, they're currently doing that for other people and making good profits off of it, but down the line, they want to build out their own constellation of satellites, launch them themselves, and then operate those services, providing the data and services to customers, which should drive even higher margins down the line. So this end-to-end vision I really love. I think it's so superior than just, say, building a satellite and selling it, and that's where the vision stops, and I really can't wait to see it realized. One of the reasons I am invested in them. I also think they happen to have probably the strongest leadership around, with Peter Beck being, in my opinion, a bit of a genius when it comes to rockets. He's been doing it forever. Started a rocket company in New Zealand, which had really no rocket industry around, and got that going. Really amazing story, and I'd encourage you to, read a little bit about Peter Beck if you haven't heard about him before. There are some cons, of course, as there are with any company. So right now they're not yet profitable. They're investing heavily in their new rocket, and they're not probably expected to be profitable for, I would say, another year or so. They've also traded at a bit of a higher price to sales multiple versus some of the other companies we're going to be talking about soon. But I do think, in my opinion, that's justified because they have delivered very strong revenue growth over the past couple of years. One of the only space companies that went public via SPAC and has actually hit the targets that they said they would hit. And I think the vision and potential margin improvements down the line really justify that price to sales, which has still been plummeting over the last year, now down to around 4. Okay, next up we have Spire Global. Now, this is an Earth observation company, but instead of looking at the Earth through the optical wavelength like your eyes can see, they're looking at radio frequencies, doing things like AI weather modeling, tracking ships and planes, national security missions. The stock has had quite a good 2024, and they've gone all the way from the mid threes up to 17, back down a bit now to more like 9, I think. They had an announcement that they were partnering with NVIDIA to do some AI work around weather prediction, and that, of course, anytime you talk about NVIDIA and AI, the stock went absolutely wild, but they did calm back down. Still, though, solid growth this year. Ultimately, they're still trading well below their SPAC price when they went public, but they do finally seem to be moving in the right direction and kind of emerging as one of the leaders of the Earth observation space. Could be an interesting play. The company does also say that they're on track to deliver free cash flow positive quarters by this summer. Please do consider hitting like and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps out so much with continuing to grow the channel and make this worthwhile for me. Okay, number 3, we have Redwire Space. And now they're an interesting company. They were kind of put together as a combination of several different smaller companies doing various things, offering a wide range of services, which makes them interesting and versatile, but also makes them a little confusing to try and pin down as having one, overarching vision or goal. They do say that they're the space infrastructure company and they're going to be fueling the growing space economy of the next few generations. They do things like manufacturing high quality, high efficiency solar panels for the ISS, all the way to experiments around, growing organs in orbit on the ISS, doing experiments on plants and growing food. Really an incredibly wide range of projects under this Redwire umbrella. So the company has made great strides towards profitability this year. They've actually recently posted back-to-back free cash flow positive quarters, which is an amazing milestone for any space SPAC because they usually cost a lot of capital at the beginning to get up and running. And the stock has also had a great bounce back year, going from the mid 2s to $5-ish, giving investors a solid double if you have been holding it in 2024. So overall, looking good on the growth side of things, looking good on making progress towards profitability. Redwire is kind of emerging as one of the success stories when it comes to publicly traded pure space companies, but they're still a very small company, which could increase your risk a little bit, only trading around, I think, a market cap of, say, 300 million. The other thing to me is just the overarching vision is a little bit, I wish it was more unifying and coming together. Like when we talk about Rocket Lab and the end-to-end space company, very exciting to me. Redwire, a little bit less so. They have a lot of cool products, a lot of cool ideas, and I do believe they'll be able to hit profitability and start making some solid money. But I just wish they were working toward some, larger goal for the company as opposed to we'll just keep building the infrastructure and products for everyone else. So that is Redwire for you, delivering a solid double this past year. Number 4, we have Planet Labs. Now, this is another interesting one. They also play in the Earth observation space, basically looking at the Earth, and they build themselves as the Bloomberg terminal for Earth. So they look at Earth in the visual wavelength, like what our eyes can see, as opposed to, say, a Spire, and they image the entire Earth every single day using an incredibly large constellation of small satellites. They're also working on a new generation of satellites with higher resolution and all the rest. The interesting thing with Planet is you can see the changes every single day in a given area on Earth, what's going on, what the changes are. They want to also get into supporting the environment, tracking carbon emissions so we can keep track of our emissions and try to reduce those and keep everyone everyone accountable. And they've been pretty prominent lately with the Russian invasion and seeing all sorts of troops, movements, and things of that nature. The one thing about Planet is, if I was making this video, say, last year, they'd probably be one of the top front runners for like best company, because up until then, they were really delivering on their revenue growth promises. But the past year, revenue growth has really fallen substantially, which is pretty tough. They are no longer meeting what they said they would achieve when they did go public to investors. And they're still committed to getting profitable, but now they're doing that by doing a lot more internal cuts and trying to control costs, as opposed to having that massive growth that we saw previously. On the positive side, though, they do have quite a solid balance sheet with a good cash cushion that should allow them to reach being cash flow positive with no problems, and makes the company a lot less risky. The government contract growth side has been pretty good, but on the commercial side of things, selling data to private companies, whether that's farms for agricultural and watering and data reasons, and there's many different potential uses like tracking infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. The commercial customer side of things, the commercial demand has not been as strong as we may have hoped. So hopefully the government side will stay strong. The commercial side might pick up in the future. This makes Planet Labs a very interesting company because the stock is around all-time lows, and in a lot of ways it's very cheap. If they can return to those massive type of growth numbers they were seeing previously, then it will have been an absolute steal at the levels it's at today. But if the revenue growth stays a lot slower, around 15, 20, 30% rates, then while they should be okay, it's not going to be like one of those massive giants of the future like a lot of people were originally hoping. If it's important to you, they're also a public benefit corporation, meaning they hold themselves to higher standards in terms of doing things that supposed to help the public and the overall planet. The CEO, Will Marshall, is very much of that mindset, and it could be a good buying opportunity here if that growth continues, but we're going to have to keep watching that closely to see. Okay, number 5, we have Intuitive Machines, the LUNR space company, ticker symbol LUNR. This one became quite famous recently because their Nova C lander mostly successfully landed on the moon, becoming the first private American company to do so. Their vision is basically to take advantage of the new growing space race and the new massive investments ramping up around the moon to build out their company with the cis lunar economy is what they're calling it. So beyond building lunar landers for NASA, they have several more, I believe 3 more lined up there. They also are one of the final 3 front runners to potentially build a lunar rover for NASA's Artemis program. There's 2 other projects in the running. They're on the short list though, so it will be interesting to see if they get selected. That would be an absolutely massive contract for the company. They've also talked about orbiting satellites around the moon to provide reliable communications to other craft around the moon as well as back to Earth, and basically anything around the moon they seem to be interested in, which is an interesting take because I really do believe that the Artemis program is for real. China is definitely for real in terms of going to the moon. Investment is really ramping up and they want to take advantage of that wherever they can, and I do have to say it was very impressive to see them land on the moon semi-successfully. They encountered a lot of challenges. It was their first attempt, and I was really impressed with the team's troubleshooting and how they were able to overcome a lot of those technical issues to get their lander on the moon in one piece, albeit not completely upright. Anyway, the stock itself is kind of flat on the year. They had a massive run-up right as that lander was getting ready to land. Now it's fallen back to Earth, as you will. But, it isn't down on the year. Now, income is still very lumpy and probably expected to be pretty lumpy going forward, depending on what's going on, whether they have another lander launching and all that. The price-to-sales ratio, relatively low at a 1.18 versus, say, a Rocket Lab around 4, and kind of 2 is what you can think of as the average for a lot of these space SPAC companies. companies. They do, I think, have a very significant single customer risk in NASA and the US government. So if NASA were to, say, change their priorities and want to focus on visiting an asteroid or something like that, or go to Mars, maybe Intuitive Machines would be significantly harmed. The other side of that, though, is that the government is a very good customer to have, always pays their bills on time. You never have to worry about them going out of business or anything like that. So there's a bit of a give and take on that side of things. Intuitive Machines could be a very interesting one, as they do have more landers coming up, and I personally do have pretty high hopes that they will be successful in getting that contract for the lunar rover. Now, our sixth and final company is MDA, and this one is a Canadian company. They do manufacturing of in-space robotics as well as spacecraft. They're probably the safest company of the bunch that we've talked about today, already profitable, unlike all these others, which are much newer. Right now, they're working on the Canadarm3, which, if you're familiar with the Canadarm on the International Space Station, good for grabbing craft, berthing them to the space station, doing work on the station, all that kind of thing. It's a point of pride for Canadians and a pretty big project for them. In addition, they also have several large contracts for building out satellite constellations. They're working with Rocket Lab on a constellation that's going to be for Apple's new emergency SOS system, where phones who are out of service areas can, get that emergency text or call through to get help. They also have a massive $2.1 billion, 198 satellite contract with Telesat to build out that huge constellation. This will be using their brand new software-defined satellite production line. These satellites are going to be called Aurora. That production line is in Montreal. Software-defined, meaning they can change it up on the go, and they're not kind of constrained to a certain type of, wavelength or frequency or capability, as far as I understand it, and it's kind of the way of the future. As I said, they're already profitable. They do have a price to earnings ratio of around 30 and a price to sales around 1.8, making them probably the safest company on this list if you are a little bit risk averse, but still potential to have lots of growth with that $2.1 billion contract, among others. Okay, that is the list of my top space stocks. Let me know which one you think is the best down in the comments. I also did just want to share, I created this DG New Space Index tracking the space companies I consider to be investable. Now, be aware when investing in the space industry, there are a lot of companies that are very risky, very scary with high cash burns that I would absolutely stay away from. So even though the overall space industry is set to grow massively, you still do have to be very selective. Personally, I would stay far away from the likes of a Virgin Galactic with their massive cash burn, still working on bringing their Delta spacecraft to the market, as well as, say, a Momentous and some others that are looking pretty scary and like they might end up with bankruptcy. So let me know your favorite space stocks down in the comments below, which one you think is the best deal right now, and anything you think I should have included but didn't. I'll be interested to check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's always appreciated. Do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.